Hello everyone, Phil here, and welcome back to DSP versus the Internet, my weekly clips react show here on DSPReacts, where I watch a variety of content from all over the internet as submitted by the channel members. Quickly to remind everyone how this works. People who have become Ultra member supporters of the channel, we're guaranteed to watch their video once a week for 4 weeks. So it's 4 videos for that. And if you're a submissions tier member, which is a lower tier, you're put into a randomized playlist where you have an equal chance for everyone else as well who's a submissions tier member to get their clips watched. So we start with Ultra members, then we swap over to submission members for the second half, essentially, of the podcast. This week, we actually have some questions submitted for super members. We haven't done this in months, but someone finally submitted some questions who was a super member. We're going to be answering some super member questions later on in the show as well. So thanks for being here. I will just say this up front. This week, there's 2 things going on. Independence Day in the United States is happening on Thursday, and we just had our very first presidential political debate a few days ago, and everyone worldwide is agreeing, man, that was a bad one. Like, people are just laughing at everything that happened during that, like, oh my goodness, we can't believe these are the guys who are going to be presidential candidates. So because of this, politics is a hotbed of discussion right now all over the world, and I have a series of political videos that were submitted. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I don't want to sit here and talk about politics all day. All right, that's not the point of the show. So, for example, this first video is like 11 minutes of this guy just sitting here talking about politics. We'll go through some of it, but there's no way I'm going to sit here for 11 minutes to talk about political discourse. You know, again, this is not a DS politics or anything like that. I will talk about politics in context to stuff going on, but I'm not going to sit here and just talk about it all day. So let's see where the show takes us. I don't want to bore you with the same kind of ongoing, you know, content all day. It's supposed to be a variety show, right? So, without further ado, it is time for DSP versus the Internet, episode 71. All right, let's see what this clip is about.
Good morning. I'm Harley Schlanger from the LaRouche Organization with your daily video update for June 13th, 2024.
A little louder.
I hope you had a chance to join us live yesterday for the...
How does that sound? How does that volume level sound? Hopefully it's good.
Schiller Institute's emergency press conference on the danger of nuclear war is real and it must be stopped. The panel...
He's not even looking at the camera. You notice that? What's he looking at? Something is very interesting to his right. He's not looking at the camera whatsoever. Too quiet? A little louder? Okay. Here we go.
Was a distinguished panel. Included eloquent speeches by Scott Ritter, Colonel Richard Black, and Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson. And a link to the video is in the description section below on today's update. Now, Helga Zepp-LaRouche also spoke. She's the founder of the Schiller Institute and the current chairwoman. And all 4 of them gave a clear message. The U.S. provocations against Russia are dangerous. The refusal to talk and negotiate is lunacy. And they made the point, don't expect a change until the American people demand it, because the leaders are completely under the control of the war hawks and the imperial forces of the City of London and Wall Street and the integrated corporate cartels that run the governments in these countries.
So in a nutshell, what's happening is, in Russia, we already know, you know, Vladimir Putin has been doing some stuff. There's a war in Ukraine. There's other things. And a lot of the world governments don't agree with what he's doing, but no one has really done anything about it. Okay? So I guess what's been happening is there's been increased rhetoric from at least our government, particularly our president, basically being very anti-Russia. And so I guess what he's saying is there was a talk where all these people who were, you know, people who study, academics studying world politics said, is not good. Basically, what they're doing is you're being like very staunchly anti-Russia, which could be very bad for the world. You could cause world war. And what he's claiming, at least, okay, is he's saying that this is all due to the fact that corporations control the world. Corporate interests want world war, because if there's war, corporations make money because they get to manufacture weapons, they get to sell, you know, healthcare items. They get to do all these things that normally in a peaceful world, the profits can't be made on. That's essentially what he's saying right now in that first minute and a half. He said it in a very roundabout way, but basically that's what he's saying. He feels that the reason that our American government is very anti-Russia and basically not willing to work with Russia and work out issues between our countries is because they want war, because that's actually what corporations want. And corporations control our government. That's literally what he just said. Okay.
Now, they compared the difference today to the Cuban Missile Crisis, which was an extremely dangerous moment. But at that point, President Kennedy wisely conducted back-channel negotiations with the Russians to work out an agreement to remove the Soviet missiles in return for removing American missiles that were in Turkey pointed at the Soviet Union. The negotiations led to a limited nuclear test ban treaty and an ongoing discussion process that continued even during the most perilous times of the Cold War. There were arms control negotiations, which led to the peaceful dismantlement of the Warsaw Pact after 1991.
So, in a nutshell, things like this have happened before. There was a Cuban Missile Crisis where it was a big thing about nuclear missile placement and manufacturing, and it was a world crisis. And what he's saying is at that time, our president talked behind the scenes with the people involved, and essentially, even though we were still kind of at each other's necks publicly, privately behind the scenes, there were peaceful talks that got everything resolved. And what he's saying is today, this is just isn't happening. Okay.
Now, Ritter, Black, and Wilkerson are all military veterans, and they warned that the U.S. military is not prepared for either a nuclear war or prolonged conventional war. U.S. industry and its economy is not up to the task. In fact, the deindustrialization policy has weakened the U.S. ability to keep up, even though we have a nearly $1 trillion defense budget. And more.
So you hear what he just said. We're not in the same situation we've been in previous wars where we could manufacture enough to fight a war. We can't even do it anymore. We basically have phased out a lot of that. I mean, let's be honest, a lot of our manufacturing is outsourced to other countries, so we don't even have the means to fight a war or a nuclear war. So that's what military leaders are basically saying.
More importantly,
okay,
the population is unprepared for what's about to hit. They use the term sleepwalking into World War III. Now, for her part, Helga Zeppler-Roush emphasized that the economic policies that are behind this represent a collapse or are causing a collapse of the Western economies. They're debt-ridden. The need for new loot to balance their books is overwhelming and leading to an expansion of the predatory looting. But they're running into problems, which is the refusal of the nations of the Global South to continue the old colonial policies of the imperial powers. What we're seeing is the emergence of a new order, a rejection of the unipolar imperial order, a new order based on sovereign nations negotiating for the interests of their people, as opposed to subordinating their policies to the rapacious need for loot from the predatory cartels. The examples she gave were the Belt and Road Initiative.
I mean, he's just going on and on and on about this. It's basically, it's similar to some stuff that I've talked about. It's actually bigger scale. Like when I talk about the corruption of our government, I'm like, our government outright is controlled by corporations, 100%. There's a whole lobbying system set up to do this. We already have evidence that our politicians receive kickbacks and paid vacations and gifts from corporations in order for them to give them the interest that they want in the public eye. So what he's saying is basically this is a bigger scale. This is not just local governments. This is the world. In the world right now, all these governments are essentially out to basically just help, companies to control everything. I get what he's saying. I don't want to watch an 11-minute video about this, though. It's also particularly not very interesting. So I think that whoever submitted this, thanks, I get it. At the same time, this kind of very boring delivery, I'm not sure really works for the show. When I have to, translate into layman's terms what he's saying for the audience, and half the audience is asleep in the chat, I think it's time to go to the next video. Now, this is interesting, okay? If you guys aren't aware, GameTrailers.com doesn't exist anymore. They used to be a website that would post up videos like this back in the day. They were, very prominent mid-2000s to late 2000s until YouTube kind of took over. And they always had gameplay content, countdowns, game reviews. They actually were originally where the angry video game nerd would post his videos, and then he would post them elsewhere, but he would always post it to GameTrailers.com first, okay? Someone archived all their shit when they went out of business. So this is videos from back then. It's the top 10 worst consoles, what they considered the worst consoles were, in 2007. So what's interesting is it's not even widescreen or HD. Let's watch some of this.
Top 10 worst consoles.
Wow.
Unless your grandparents hated you during the holidays and birthdays, hopefully you have limited memories of the following consoles. These are the machines that have swindled wallets and bled the industry.
Oh, the PS3, yeah, it's terrible.
Bad games and bad business are the elements of their philosophy. You will never find such a list of scum and villainy outside of a European war crimes court. Be warned, these are the worst, most offensive digital contraptions that dare to be labeled as entertainment. Buckle up, we're going in.
Number 10.
So before we even get to it, what do you feel about that presentation, right? Very different from anything done today, right? It was, look at all pop culture clips from other things superimposed in there. You know, oh, European war crimes. Like, what? What are you talking about? You're talking about gaming consoles, and you're bringing up, like, you see what I'm saying? Like, back then, I remember everything was like, oh, extreme, bro. Hyper-exaggerated in your face, dude. Right? It was still, like, almost like a bro thing in the 2000s. It wasn't even mainstream. This website wasn't mainstream. You know what I mean? So, all right, here we go. Let's see what they say. Number 10.
Phantom.
I have no idea what the Phantom is.
What better
Never heard
name
of
for a
it.
console that was never released than, well, the Phantom? In 2002, Infinium Labs made the ill-fated announcement of a revolutionary game system that would operate without the use of cartridges, CDs, or DVDs.
Oh, you mean an all-digital console? I've never heard anything like that before. But what's funny is, this was in 2002. This video was made in 2007. Do you think that anyone had the foresight to see that everything would go complete digital, no physical medium at all in the future like we have now? You know, no one thought about that back then. This was over 20 years ago.
Instead, all games would be downloaded through an online subscription service on a pay-to-play basis. Though promised to hit retail stores during the 2004 holiday season, a lack of funds and acquired game licenses pushed the Phantom's release date further and further down the line until it inevitably reached 2000 never. The Phantom is no more, but promises of a PC client offering the same service drift in the internet's endless ether.
Endless ether.
Number 9. Engage.
Now this I remember. I actually saw this both at GameStop, they had it, and at cell phone stores they had it, because it was a cell phone and a game system in one. I don't ever remember seeing anyone who had one, but I know that they sold it because I saw demos of it.
Other than the strategy title Pathway to Glory and the pseudo-MMO Pocket Kingdom, where all the characters talked in leet speak, this side-talking game system / phone offered nothing but problems. The screen was taller than it was wide. You had
like
to
a
take
mobile
out the
screen.
battery to change games, and using it to take calls made it look like a taco was glued to your head. The N-Gage QD made it easier to change games and put an end to side-talking, but the N-Gage brand is most remembered as a mildly humorous internet joke.
Number 8.
Wow.
Virtual Boy.
Everyone knows how
Innovation
Virtual
is
Boy.
in the eye of the beholder, until it makes you go blind. The brainchild of Game Boy creator Gunpei Yokoi, the Virtual Boy's real 3D sounded good on paper, but in reality, not so much. Available technology limited colors to black and red.
Yep.
Games actually demanded players take frequent breaks to offset headaches, stiff necks, dizziness, and eye strain.
There were two major problems with it. The first was, as you can see, it's literally like a headset visor, but they didn't sell it as a headset visor. They sold it as a tripod. So in what situation could you really play? Like me right now, this is ideal. So right now where my hands are, okay? This is where my desk is, right here. So if I had the tripod and the headset, I could literally lean forward and play it right now. But that's because I have an elevated laptop desk. How many people play video games on an elevated laptop desk? No one. So no one could find a comfortable way to play it. You could hold it, but then your arms are tired. But how are you playing it? You can't hold the controller, right? Like, how do you play this goddamn thing? How does it not have a head strap? And the answer is it's heavy. So if it had a head strap, it would actually hurt your neck. So they purposefully didn't sell it with a head strap because they didn't want people suing them saying they hurt their neck playing the thing. So basically the entire thing is misdesigned. That's number one. Number two, this thing works. I can tell you this. They had it at Blockbuster Video when I was a kid. And I played the demo for about 15, 20 minutes. My parents were off looking at movies. I was playing the Virtual Boy. I played the tennis game. That's what they had in it. It looked good. Like, the tennis game had a really good 3D effect to it. You hit the ball, it goes to the background, then it comes back. It looked nice. The problem was, I literally played it for 15 minutes, and my eyes were burning profusely, and my neck hurt. So I was like, how the fuck are you expected to play this at home if you can only play for 15 minutes at a time? You know? I'm sure the red and black graphics don't help that. And I'm wondering what other colors maybe they could have used that maybe would have been easier on the eyes, but maybe red. Maybe they tested and red actually was like the best. I don't know. But only 2 colors with a 3D effect that makes you have burning eyes, neck strain. Like, everything is misdesigned about this. If they had designed it differently or waited a few years for technology to advance, maybe it would have worked. But for the time, it was just... And by the way, here's the best part. It's called the Virtual Boy. What about it is virtual reality? Nothing. All it's a 3D effect. It's not... Most games on it, you weren't in first-person virtual reality at all. Like, the idea is not even correct because they shouldn't have called it Virtual Boy. They should have called it, like, 3D Boy or something, and it would have made more sense. So the whole thing was completely misdesigned.
All unfortunate results of playing the Virtual Boy. Only 14 games were ever released in the US, with most looking like Game Boy games with gimmicky 3D effects. Sure, Wario Land was decent, but most gamers decided that they would rather be dead than go red, forcing Nintendo to abandon the console just months after launch.
Yep.
Number 7. 3DO.
Oh, yeah.
It's a new experience.
I had a friend who had this console. Let's see what they have to say about it, and then I'll tell you my experience with it.
Debuting with a $700 price tag that even Kaz Hirai's PS3 couldn't match.
$599 US, $599 US, $599 US.
Giant enemy crab.
The 3DO, conceived by EA founder Trip Hawkins,
It plugs into the future.
was insanely pricey and squandered its impressive processing power on playing horrible full-motion video. Importers and software pirates could enjoy the console's complete lack of regional lockouts or copy protection, but the system boasted few games worth stealing that weren't already available on other platforms. After being completely crushed by the PlayStation, Return Fire, considered to be the console's best original game, was ported over and promptly forgotten.
Oh, no one was around.
Oh,
I
God.
had him blow my little head off until...
Take your damn clothes off!
Number 6.
That's it. They didn't say that much about it. The problem with the 3DO was that it was actually the most powerful console at the time, but they charged you $700 for it. So you're like, okay, so what am I going to play on it? It's going to have revolutionary games, right? No, it had power, but no games. The games were all ports of FMV games from like Sega CD or other consoles. It had very few exclusives, and the exclusives were garbage. Like, plumbers don't wear fucking ties, right? Like, that's one of the big ones. My friend had it, and he had Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo for it. It looked and played well. It looked like the arcade game, and it had the same sound effects, graphics. Like, it was good. The problem was the 3DO controller didn't have 6 buttons. So in order to play it, you had to buy a special controller just to play Super Turbo. And outside of that, there were no other games that needed that many buttons. So you spend $700. There's no good games on it. Any of the good games are cross-platform anyway. You can play on another console. And then you finally get a good game and you can't play it because there's not enough buttons on the controller. So it was just a huge fucking mess. It's sad that that was like the best port of Super Turbo at the time, too. It was just on a console no one played or could play.
Sega Genesis add-ons.
What's funny, too, is like this video is very reminiscent of Angry Video Game Nerd. If you look at the Angry Video Game Nerd's early videos, he does one on the Virtual Boy, he does one on the 3DO, and he does one on the Sega CD and the Sega 32X. At this time in gaming history, it was funny and very common to make fun of these. So this is like reminiscent of everything that he did in his blown out review videos. This is just like a countdown of the same content.
Add-ons rarely work, and nowhere was this more evident than with the Sega Genesis /Sega CD/CDX/32X. Hoping to squeeze some more life out of its aging Genesis console, Sega decided that interactive movies was the way to go and created the Sega CD add-on. Despite teenage star Dana Plato's appearance in the god-awful Night Trap, interactive movie games stunk and consumers were not fooled. When the platform began to fall on its face despite the excellent Sonic CD, Sega released the CDX, a machine that included all the functionality of the Genesis and Sega CD in one unit.
I didn't even know about that.
In the ultimate boneheaded move, the CDX sold for $400, $100 more than buying the two machines separately. For obvious reasons, the CDX bombed, only for it to be followed up by yet another stinker in the form of the 32X. Another CD-based machine that plugged into the Genesis's cartridge slot. It featured 32-bit processing, but hardly any games. With the Saturn just a year away, gamers turned up their noses, and the Sega Genesis add-ons turned up on our list of the 10 worst consoles of all time.
I can't imagine what it must have been, because there was a big console war at this time of Sega versus Nintendo. This was before PlayStation even entered the arena. And can you imagine if you were the Sega side, you were like, well, I like today it's Xbox and PlayStation, and it's like, well, I got to do everything Xbox says. I got to do everything PlayStation says. I need the PS5 Pro. I need the newer version of this console, or whatever. Can you imagine if you bought the Genesis and then the Sega CD and then the CDX and then the 32X all within like 4 years? So you probably spent like $2,000 on all these consoles just to not play that many good games. And then the Saturn came out right away after it. And like, what the hell was going on? Why did they release that much hardware in such a short period of time? It was unheard of. And everyone, you know, before Sega fans. No wonder Sega crashed, right? It's like, what the hell?
Jaguar.
I never played the Jaguar.
Numbers define the capabilities of a system, and while other companies would brand the number of bits on their hardware, Atari felt like its Jaguar console from 1993 was self-explanatory. A bold advertising campaign commanded gamers to do the math and see how the Jaguar's professed 64-bit architecture was superior to its Genesis and Super Nintendo adversaries. But what Atari failed to see itself was a number of fundamental flaws with the system, including faulty processors, poor third-party support, and a ridiculous controller setup. The Jag's only claims to fame were some of the worst exclusives of all time, such as the post-Cheers Woody Harrelson vehicle, White Men Can't Jump. While Atari may be out of the console race, its awesomely bad commercials will forever remain etched in our memories.
Can you repeat the question?
Jaguar! Jaguar! Jaguar!
Number 4.
Ow.
Philips CDI.
The CDI was very similar to 3DO, except it had a lot of like educational software and shit on it, but they also overcharged for it massively. And it had those terrible Mario and Zelda games on it with the FMVs. Atari 5200 was the filler console between the 2600 and the 7800. They tried to improve the technology, but made a lot of fucked up stuff, like the controllers didn't work, and a lot of the games were not as good, so... and it was more expensive. It was also giant. Oh, God.
Tiger Electronics Symmetry.
Tiger R-Zone was... You know how Tiger handheld games were... You know what those are, right? Those little shitty things that you have, the portable things that aren't even real video games. They actually tried to make a console that was liquid crystal display, and it was awful. It was laggy, it was blurry, and all the games sucked. So it failed miserably. I'm skipping through this because it's taking so long, and I want to do one more video before we split the part. So what's their top failure?
Gizmondo.
What the hell is Gizmondo?
It's a complete mystery to us why this handheld didn't sell like hotcakes. How could a portable system fail with the attractive price point of $400? A depressing battery life, a screen the size of a cell phone, and must-have games like Sticky Balls and Mama Can I Mow the Lawn? You got blue balls, green balls, yellow and all. I'm gonna get them sticky balls. Maybe it was because the budget version forced you to watch 3 commercials a day. Or it might have been the fact that its executive, Stefan Eriksson, was linked to the Swedish Mafia and drove a Ferrari like he was playing Twisted Metal. Or maybe it's because it has one of the dumbest names ever. Despite the fact that it could take pictures, store music and video, send and receive emails, and came packaged with a fully functional GPS, no console crash has been more sadly amusing than the Gizmondo.
I didn't even know Gizmondo existed. I had no clue. All right, let's try to watch one more video in this part before we split it.
Since I can remember, I've been told that I have a gay voice, and the internet loves to tell me that I sound like the honey badger.
It's only 9 days ago. All right, let's see.
Oh, the honey badgers are just crazy.
So, is there such a thing as a gay voice? Like, is it quantifiable? If we take out all the slay, boots the house down, and remove any visual or behavioral clues, could you still tell? Surprisingly, science has a lot to say about it.
Girl, bye, get out, get out, get out.
In order to study gay versus straight voices, researchers look at parameters such as pitch variation, like how much a person's pitch changes as they talk, duration values for vowels and consonants, aka how long people hold their A, E, I, O, U sounds, or how long people hold their S's. And some studies just straight up get random people to listen to people talk and try to judge whether they thought that person speaking was gay or straight.
Results find that gay men speak with higher pitch variation, meaning that their range from low to high is much more extreme than straight men. Not surprised we have range, honey. These pitch studies were done in many languages like English, Dutch, and French, and in all cases, gay men spoke with higher pitch variation, meaning the gay voice expands beyond language and isn't just the words or culture we engage in.
I'm curious, why did it begin? What started that? Was it because basically there was a desire to feel more effeminate, perhaps, and you felt that women have higher pitched voices, so trying to maybe emulate that? I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. I have no idea. Maybe they'll say.
Gay men were also found to have longer vowel durations for A, I, and U, aka they hold these vowels longer in general when they speak compared to straight men. But gay men are also more likely to hold their S sound for longer than straight people. Gay people holding their S for longer may make you think of the quintessential like gay lisp, which is very triggering to me. Like as a kid, everyone would always make fun of me and say I sounded like super silly Billy.
Oh
so
God,
sadly, there is some.
That's South Park right there. That's the South Park Big Gay Al's voice. Yeah.
Truth to like those bullies making fun of me about that. But it's also a common misconception because a lisp is when you misarticulate your S's, whereas gay people are more likely to over-articulate the S. In fact, studies show that gay men are no more likely to have a lisp than straight men. Finally, when studying gay versus straight men, it was found that gay men were more likely to articulate than straight men, which totally makes sense to me. All my straight guy friends are always like, oh yeah, hey man, do you want to I'm always like, okay, what?
Because of these findings, it was hypothesized that perhaps the vocal differences between straight and gay men were due to hormones, like differences in testosterone possibly.
Hormones? How would hormones affect how you pronunciate? That doesn't even make sense to me. Or the pitch. Well, could you argue that depending on your hormones, it could change the pitch of your vocal cords? That I don't know. Scientifically, has that been proven?
But after studying this, it was found that gay men have just as much testosterone as straight men. So instead, researchers began looking into environmental differences as a possible explanation.
It turns out both gay men and straight men change their voice based on who is listening. Yes, straight men will modulate their voice based on who is listening too. One study found straight men would speak more stereotypically masculine to strangers than to people they were comfortable with. Straight men would lower their voice when speaking in leadership roles, when giving orders or commands, and they would also lower their voice in the presence of an attractive woman.
Gay men changed their voice too, but under different circumstances. One study found gay men who disliked sounding gay were able to modulate their voice to sound more straight and were more likely to be mistaken as straight by listeners. A Thai study found that gay people changed their voice depending on if they're talking to friends, coworkers, or their family members. They tend to use the most falsetto voice speech or upper vocal range when talking to friends. An Italian study also found that gay men would sound more gay when they were talking to somebody they already came out to, or if they were speaking to somebody who they presumed was gay. A really fascinating study on gay YouTubers found that after making a public coming out video on YouTube, their subsequent videos were more likely to be perceived by people as sounding gay. Whereas straight YouTubers of the same age over that same time period would end up sounding more straight to people, the gay ones sounded more gay over time.
This has led to a theory that sounding gay is an adaptation of gay men to allow others around them to know that they are in fact gay. But this isn't set in stone. It's important to note that while some people may feel gay men talk more like women, the research doesn't fully support this idea. There are
So, even though the research doesn't support it, if you're gay, you want people to know you're gay. Well, what circles does that matter? Your friends, right? It doesn't matter in the workplace. In the workplace, your sexual orientation has no merit at all. Nobody cares. It doesn't matter. So in the workplace, you're going to have the more monotone voice. But if you're in a social circle and you need people to know that you're gay for various different reasons, then you would accentuate the voice so that people know. I guess that's what they're saying, but I guess they're saying that the research didn't back that up.
Some syllables and ways that we speak that are similar to women, but gay voice has its own unique characteristics as well. In other words, it adopts some female features, but others are completely unrelated.
But what about our dear lesbian friends and other queer people? We haven't forgot about you. While there is less research on it, studies have found unique characteristics of lesbian voices, but they're far less socially noticed than gay male speech.
Of course, many straight men can sound gay and gay men can sound straight, but studies show there is a difference in speech that will change based on who is listening to you. How you're perceived will also relate to like your mannerisms. You know, I talk with my hands a lot, the way you dress. It's a large collar for a straight guy, I must say. And this all weaves together to create the complexity of speech in relation to sexual fluidity.
But what about gay face? Can you tell somebody's gay just from looking at their face? We actually have an entire podcast episode diving into the science of gay face on our Side Note podcast. You can click it on the screen here or use the link in the description if you want to check it out on YouTube.
And that's it. Okay. Well, I mean, I'll be honest, they didn't really answer the question, did they? I thought they didn't really answer the question of why do gay people sound like that at all. You know, I guess the best answer would be, yeah, because it differentiates yourself from straight people. If you want people to know in a social circle that you're gay and you talk like that, they know you're gay. As opposed to at work, you don't need to talk like that. No one should care what your sexual orientation is, right? Oh, really? Yeah, I get. Yeah, look, your stream has been temporarily blocked. We decided, yeah, copyright stuff. Wow. Well, it's a good thing I was about to split the part regardless. Let's do that. What? Let me go ahead and tell everyone in chat. For those watching on demand, you've probably never experienced this, but if you're here live and we're reacting to a video that YouTube deems is someone else's property, which makes no sense because you have the right to legally react to it. It's been proven in a court of law, but YouTube doesn't care. They will shut down your stream for 3 minutes. And then after 3 minutes, the stream just comes right back as long as it doesn't detect that that content's still being streamed. Obviously, I'm not streaming it anymore. Stupid. Very stupid. Why would that video from 9 days ago have been claimed like that? I was approaching it from a very scientific perspective. I thought the video was fine. You tell me why YouTube would have that video flagged that I can't watch it, right? But again, YouTube doesn't care about the law. They just do whatever they want to try to legally protect their own butts. The law says you can react to content like that. So, anyway, thanks for watching DSP versus the Internet, everybody. I'll see you in the next part when we'll continue with the Ultra member submissions.